to, challenge Queen on whatever it is she has to say. So that's what we're gonna do. And then, when we get that out the way, we will let Melanie speak. And I can promise you guys, when Melanie starts talking, Black Jesus and Vic are gonna have a lot to say. Mr. Misha and Queen might even have a lot to say, but that's what we are going to do. So please tap that screen and share the live. Okay, I'm about to bring up Melanie. Queen, go
Yes, I
ahead.
would love to hear what she has to say.
All right. Hi, everybody. Now, from what Black Jesus is saying, hi, Black Jesus. Hi, everybody on the panel. Um,
Hello.
hi. And so when it comes down to fathers being in a home and stuff like that, I know personally for me, I never had my dad. I know who he is. I know I don't like him, but at the end of the day, me and him never had a relationship. I was never taught anything as far as what to expect in a relationship from a man because he wasn't really the best one. And I know for a lot of young women, your father is the first man in your life where you hold that's the standard that you measure all other men against. A lot of us missed that. A lot of us didn't have that. Just like how you were talking about how rearing your daughter and her listening to you and then not being a question about her being overpowered or feeling like she's going through changes. That's something I've actually got an opportunity to be in another live earlier and I had a chance to learn some things because I was that modern woman where I'm Miss Independent and it's like at the same time I was also married where I was also submissive. I'm in a transition of my time right now where a lot of things have happened to me in a bad relationship, in a bad marriage, but I'm not going to let it deter me from finding true happiness with somebody else. And right now, if I can find somebody that I could see that is worthy of my submission, I had to learn different terminologies when it came to that. Because most of the time, where I felt like when men wanted me to submit, it was a control issue. And I felt like it was just you wanted to dictate everything about me. So I had no free will of my own. And I was supposed to be barefoot pregnant in the kitchen or whatever may have you. And in coming to having an understanding and realizing some things and hearing from much mature and more seasoned men about how they explain things, first and foremost, from what I understand and learn, a man that is for you will never ask you to submit. It will naturally happen on its own. He will give you the space and safety. And then on top of that, you will naturally begin to trust and you're willing to let him take the lead. That's when it becomes submission. You allow him to take the lead. And taking the lead and respect that, okay, we all have our parts. We're all good at certain things. There's masculine tasks, there's feminine tasks. But sometimes we might have to occasionally change our hats. I might not feel good. You might have to cook today. I might know how to sit there and build something real quick better than what you do because the parts are too small and my hands are smaller than yours. Whatever may have you. But there's a balance and there's shared responsibilities regardless. Just like he will majority of the time take the lead, he will also at some point submit to me too because he's nurturing me in my femininity. Imagine an egg, everybody. That yolk is the woman in her femininity. Within that space, she can be freely feminine. You get what I'm saying? The white of the egg and a hard shell. That is the masculinity that she can freely move in. She is protected. She is safe. Even though in her fragileness, she is safe with him to be her truest feminine self. People that are talking about 50-50, yeah, it's like in this now day and age where everybody's not making but between like what I want to say 30 to $80,000 a year. Sometimes it's not feasible for the woman to stay at home, especially if you're not in a position where you can solely provide. So what do you do with all that?
I'm sorry, really
Either
quick,
you're
Queen,
going to
really quick, Queen, really
go
quick,
ahead.
not to cut you off. No,
No,
just
you're
so
fine.
everybody knows, because I always say this. No, the average black man, the average black woman are both in 2021. They both of them made a little less than 42,000. So the black man made 41,964, and the black woman made 41 7 something. So I just want to put that out there. But go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for that. So that makes it even more harder for a woman to be able to have to stay home and be in that wifely role and be that loving and a devoted person. I was that wife where I did do 50-50. I'm coming home tired. I'm going through changes. And it led to a whole lot of problems within my household. Not saying it's necessarily my fault. There's a lack of control on the ex significant other that I'm soon to be divorced husband on his part, because at the end of the day, as being a man in the household, there's certain responsibilities you have, and it's not necessarily saying control, but in the fine definition of responsibility, you're managing and controlling things. You get what I'm saying? You're managing and controlling your home, not controlling the actual person. You manage and control your kids in respect that you rear them up and make sure they're going through things in life that are according to your plan, how you want them to be. Not saying they're going to come out the way you want them to, because at the end of the day, they're not property, they're individuals, they're going to be their own people. But best way I could put it at this point basically is just like I said, my egg analogy, I've been thinking about that for a while, about how the yolk kind of like bounces around within inside the egg and then the yolk never breaks. You get what I'm saying? Like, you want your woman to love you to the point that when you come home from work, your dinner's ready. She wants to sit there and get you a drink, maybe run you a bath, get you all relaxed. That's the stuff I personally would love to do for somebody. I would love to do that. And it's not even necessarily even being conditional. It's just the fact that when people sit there and say, oh, they want me to be submissive because they want to take control over the finances, that sounds transactional to me. If I want to submit to you, I want to submit to you because you earned my trust. You earned that. You get what I'm saying? Like, there's no reason beyond that. I don't want to keep rumbling on because I don't want to keep repeating myself. So I don't need a whole 10 minutes. So if anybody wants to rebuttal and jump in, please by all means do so.
Vic, let's start. Vic, let's start with you. Vic, you've been in here for a while. Then we can go to Black Jesus. Vic, do you have anything you want to say to what Queen Lear said?
Um, I just want to say that if men are in here talking to y'all, we give a fuck.
Right.
We not
I,
here just to. I'm just saying this because this. I'm saying this because at this point, is for men in general, it's getting exhausting because it's the pushback from us telling y'all. Okay, it starts with this. Y'all are asking for leadership. There are a group of men that has assessed what is wrong with the black community. And the primary fault in the black community is a lack of two-parent homes. It's a lack of sustainable relationships. We see this. The kids are out of control. They have no ideals. They have no morals. They have no principles. They have no values. Like Black Jesus was saying, they have no virtues because they aren't being parented. And it's hard to parent in a one parent household. It's difficult for me in
mm-hmm.
my two parent household. With four pair of eyes, it's still difficult. With our extended family, it's still difficult. So, what we're saying is, in order to repair the black community, we have to come to an agreement of order. Order starts first with the family. Hence the term, who raised you?
Mm-hmm.
So if we can't get our quote unquote house in order, stop fucking with these white people and telling them what the fuck they need to do for us. If we can't get our own house in order, we have no organization amongst our community because we have no organization within our homes. We can sit here and bicker about this dumbass gender war till the cows come home. But until some kind of arrangement and agreement is made between us, this shit gonna turn into black men saying, okay, cool. Because what y'all failing to realize about black men, we're not in the same social status that we were 30 years ago, despite y'all constantly trying to remind us of that, of what white men have done. We're over that shit, to be honest with you. We are over it. We are going out and we're not even seeing that shit no more. Like, that is not an excuse for the modern black man no more. So, we're not throwing your faults in your face to humiliate you. We're saying these are your faults because they need to be corrected in order for us to get our homes back in order. These are the roles that are necessary not for my ego or your ego. but it is better for the kids. Our kids are suffering. If you listen, I think no, you had a show where people was just trauma dumping about how they was raised, how their mothers raised them alone. And I'm not saying it's 100% her fault, because she's alone. She's going to get 100% of the fault because she's alone raising the child. She's the responsible party at this point.
Hmm.
Now that's what
So
I feel.
so
Exactly what you're saying, Vic.
so it
Because
doesn't
I am,
matter.
I'm
It,
blamed.
you there. It just is what it is. So at the end of the day, we are trying to advocate for the black family. But in order for the black family to operate successfully, you got to take into account what men want and desire out of their women. And when black men say submission, we're not talking about cracking the whip. Please understand that. And when it comes to, I'm going to remind y'all this every time. Toxic masculinity was derived or coined by a transsexual Australian. When they coined that term in the article that they wrote, they distinctly separated black men from this toxic masculinity and said we are the most egalitarian community. So
And what
with
does
that
that
being
mean?
said,
Can
it
you tell me
means
what that
that
means?
egalitarian means that we are an equal society. Basically, that women and men hold the same power in the community. There is no patriarchy. There is no matriarchy. Neither one
Okay.
of those exist.
Thank you.
Egalitarian, it just means that we are both on basically for this conversation on equal terms. We both share power in the community dynamic. So
Okay. I learned
this
something here.
story, so this story of black patriarchy being suppressive or oppressive to y'all is bullshit. Y'all are basically trying to transmute white women's problems into the black community. We never had a patriarchy in the African American, Black American, whatever you want to call yourself. We never had that shit in our community. At best, we had a pseudo patriarchy, and that was due out of survival, due to Jim Crow, due to all these other racial issues we had. Out of survival, it was necessary for men to stand in the forefront. No one ever heard of Coretta Scott King getting assassinated. Betty Shabazz never got assassinated. It was the men because we were on the forefront. So this argument that we're having about our family dynamic is bullshit. We're starting from a false point. And as black men do the research, we're seeing that now and we're starting to speak up. And this pushback is unnecessary. We can have a conversation instead of throwing darts at each other. That's all it resorts to is a shit piss contest. And this shit is tiring for men because the only thing we're asking for is cooperation.
Now, see, that's the thing for me. It's right now cooperation, absolutely 100%, because that's it come from both parties. But we have a lot of people that go into situations with the precedence of being fed on potential of certain things instead of dealing with the person and the individual as they are right now. And then you have like there's more of the issue when it comes to the fact that we're always going into relationships not ready to be in a relationship. And that's the thing that really messes us up in that dynamic. Where nobody's taking the time out, going to therapy, doing the inner work, getting themselves together to put themselves in a position to be marriage material, to be husband material, to be wife material. You're
I'm
coming in.
talking to a lot of women nowadays, and they are saying that they're going into therapy. The problem I'm finding with the
I'm
therapy.
talking about men too. I'm talking about both. But go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, no. Guys too. I went through therapy, and it was a great benefit to me. I learned how to connect the shit I was doing today with the stuff that I've been through in the past that I didn't know was connected. I learned how to better understand my own emotions, and I learned some really great coping skills for how I feel sometimes, how other people make me feel, and how I deal with how the world shits, on my Sunday every now and again. right? So I think people are doing therapy. What I think the problem is we have a dominant narrative. This is the dominant narrative on the women's side. So the men
Yeah.
have their dominant narrative, and that dominant narrative on the men's side is if we want to, the basic building block of community is family. And if we want to have community, then we need to build back families. And on the woman's side, it's I'm single, I'm independent, I don't need a man, I can do this on my own. It's spirits, ancestors, it's birth signs, it's what they used to do in a handful of tribes in Africa and how they were black queens there. And so we need to be under a matriarchy here, or we don't have to submit to male leadership here, or it's slavery broke the black family, even though we had 100 years of family after slavery. We were married up to a rate of 80% until 1960. It's colorism. And like Vic was saying, it's racism. It's all of these isms that are
Mm-hmm.
responsible for the state of the community, and not that Pookie had a baby with Pookeisha, after she had a baby with Ray
Oh
Ray, after
no.
she had a baby with Nick Cannon, after she had a baby with Future. It's all of this extra bullshit. It's the patriarchy. It's all this pushback and these disingenuous conversations instead of just saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. And what we need to be doing is that folks like Melanie, where Melanie, I'm making an assumption about you, and you're probably going to correct me, that don't believe that marriage is an integral part of how we're going to save the black community and women who represent those ideas. No problem. If that's how you feel, no problem. I'm dizzy from arguing about it with you. Just don't have babies. Statistically, we can prove that the kids that come out of single parent households have shit odds. So you want to be single, independent, you don't want to submit, you don't want to have a husband, you don't care about marriage, fine. Don't reproduce. A child does not deserve to be brought up in your bullshit where they don't get to have a dad because of all the sentient beings on the planet, from ants
Yeah.
to wasps to fucking kangaroos to lions, the only beings on the planet where the females think they don't need the males are black and white women. If you're the only ones that don't need the cooperation of the opposite sex to rear children and to keep the anthill running, if that's what you believe, then fine. Stop reproducing. Stop stealing the baby batter of Pookie and Ray Ray, or finding some dude that's loose with his seeds and having babies when you in your 30s before your biological clock stop ticking. Stop freezing your eggs and making children who grow up with the natural deficit of no family and no father. No problem. Be single, independent, and community organized, and chase the bad or city girl summer or whatever the hell you want to do. Just stop having babies.
Okay. So now, ladies and gentlemen, everyone please mute up. Yeah, everyone please mute up. Some of y'all got a terrible back.
Can I speak because he
Yeah,
want
you're
to
about
talk
you're
about
yeah, Melanie, you're about to speak right now. Hold on. So
okay,
we're about to
because
let we're
I got
about
some
to let
words.
yeah, I know you do. We're about to let Melanie speak. Melanie can be very long winded. So, and again, she is going to say some stuff to the people on the panel that you're going to want to unmute. So, please don't unmute. If you want to take notes, so when she's done talking, you can address her on it. People in the comments, please be respectful. We always be respectful here. You can say that you disagree. You can say she's tripping. You can say she sound crazy. Do not call her out of her name. Don't say things to indicate that you're trying to call her certain things. And that's what we're going to do. So, Melanie, go ahead and unmute. Go ahead, Melanie.
All right. I think the first thing that I have a question about is what is our community's obsession with female submission or submission in marriage in general, in partnership in general? What we're not realizing, Mr. Jones said this in the last live and nobody wanted to listen to him, is that a lot of the things that we're regurgitating and a lot of the ways that we think that the black family will be saved is specifically rooted in white supremacist idealisms. The nuclear family is going to save the Black community. No, the Black community will save the Black community. The family is not just mother, father, children, right? Family is mother, father, children, aunt, uncle, cousin, friend, right? It's family is the family structure is about community in general. White supremacy has really brainwashed us, and especially in this idea of individualism, especially in Western society, that we must cape for us and our family, and that is going to save us in community. When if we think individualistically, that is not saving the community. That is only going to save us, and it's going to specifically keep us in the space we're always thinking about self and self-preservation and self in the family. Whereas when us more progressive Black women are speaking about the ways that we were before white supremacy, what we're trying to do is bring back community in general. Like, I don't need to be married to have family. I literally have family. I'm single as fuck. I have family that are my friends. I have family that are my relatives. They are all my family. Just because a woman does not have a father present doesn't mean that she didn't have any male role models. We have uncles, we have male friends, we have older brothers, we have so many other males that we looked up to growing up. We don't necessarily need the father. Let's talk about specifically this idea that criminals and people who don't do well in society come from single mother homes. That is framed in a way that puts the entire culpability on the mother instead of also on the father, because a single mother home is not just the fault of the mother, generally speaking, right? We want to push forth this idea that single mothers in our communities ran the fathers away. That's not usually the case, although that can be a possibility. Generally speaking, the absent fathers in our community chose to be absent fathers. They chose that. And so when we talk about two-parent households, yes, obviously two-parent households are ideal, but it's not necessarily about two-parent households being in the same household. When you talk about psychology and the development of children and self-esteem and all of that so that they can do better in society, it's not about them having two parents in one home. It's about having two present parents. And those two present parents don't necessarily have to be the conventional male female. So earlier, you guys were pushing forth this rhetoric that it has to be mother father. It could be mother mother, father father. There are studies that show that children that grew up in same-sex marriages have very high self-esteem because they had two loving parents. It's not conventional, but they had two loving parents. So a lot of the reasons why people who come up in single parent homes, and I'm not going to say single mother, I'm going to say single parent in general, is because they come from broken homes and one of their parents is not there. So they suffer from a lot of abandonment issues. They have a lot of disorganized, anxious attachment styles. So they don't really know how to function in society because they've not been able to regulate emotions well because they have always suffered in abandonment and in that space in fear. So they operate from fear. So everything that they do is in fear. When if you have two loving parents that are present, whether they're in the household or not, this is what is going to cultivate very strong self-esteem and confidence in children. They don't necessarily have to be in the same home. That idea of the nuclear family is white supremacist. It's a white supremacist ideal, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And a lot of people want to deny that that is the case, but we live in a society that was colonized by white people. We were literally stripped of our entire culture and had to adopt white culture in terms of the way that we live life. So you can't sit there and tell me the nuclear family is Black. It's not. When you look again at ancient African civilizations, many of the family structures were communal. It wasn't necessarily nuclear at all. And going back to what someone else said about like black people being more egalitarian, yes, generally speaking, Black people are more egalitarian, but that's because of the way society is structured in the Western Hemisphere. Black women were forced to work before white women even had to work at all. right? Black women been working, but why? Slavery. Hi, we've been workers. You get what I'm saying? So you're pushing forth a lot of this rhetoric that the black family is broken and so on and so forth, and that the marriage is going to save that. First of all, marriage is a capitalist construct. Marriage is not necessarily about love. Partnership is about love. So when you talk about marriage, in what context are you talking about marriage? So no, I don't need to be married to start a family. I do need a partner, and I don't have to marry that person. And that partner could also be a partner. I could easily have children with a friend, and that is still family, and he will be the father of my child, and we can co-parent that child if I decide. And that is still building up the Black community. Just because a lot of more progressive Black women are going forth trying to build the community in a way that's non-conventional, that isn't specifically rooted in white supremacist idealisms, doesn't mean that we want to break up the Black family and the Black community. No, the opposite. We are looking for healthier ways that build community, and sometimes those ways are not conventional. So to sit there and say that, oh, because we are unconventional, we are demonic or we are satanic, that doesn't make any sense. We're still finding ways to build community and to build family and to build family in community. So again, the nuclear family is an individualistic white supremacist structure, and it's not based on community. So why are we relegating the saving of the Black community in individualism and the nuclear family? That doesn't make any sense.
All right. How did the nuclear family
Hold on,
affect
y'all. Melanie,
China and Japan,
Melanie, do
Melanie?
you want to go?
How,
Are you done? I want to make sure you're done before I let them go back and forth with
I
you.
think the only thing I want to say in regards to the post, look, submission in marriage and women submitting to men in marriage, that is a traditional ideal. I said this in the last slide. Society is changing. We're becoming a lot more egalitarian. The reason why submission is problematic to many of us progressive women is because it's again still rooted in white supremacist ideals, and that white supremacist ideal is still rooted in slavery. It all goes back to that. It's unfortunate that that is the case. And because what Black men still hold on to these ideals, they still are trying their darndest to be seen in the image of white men. Why?
I have a question.
When what works most ideally in partnership is partnership, however that partnership looks like. If people want to say 100 and 100, 50 50, whatever, generally speaking, I find in my experience, and I have many friends who are married or in partnerships because I have gay friends, I have lesbian friends, trans friends, straight friends, cisgendered friends, traditional friends, and more progressive friends. What I still find the most successful, happiest relationships that I've seen and marriages that I've seen, they just do what is they do best in the household, and that's how they equally divvy up the duties in the home. I do this better than you do this, so I'm going to do this and you do that because you do that better. We both do this equally, so we're going to share this. You get what I'm saying? So it's still about partnership. And so submission in general, I don't think is problematic. It's the idea that submission has to come from women solely, when really we should be submitting to each other. And that's the way that most relationships should work, in symbiosis, not, oh, I submit to him, no matter what the reasons are. And again, all of those reasons are still rooted in white supremacist ideals. Hey, Google, stop. That's all I got to say.
Black Jesus, go ahead, bro.
All right. I have a question for you, Melanie. How can you tell me how the white
I'm here, Melanie.
supremacists can you tell me how the white supremacists infected, China and Japan and all of the Asian nations for hundreds and even thousands of years back, and India with the concept of marriage and a nuclear family? Can you tell us about that? How the white supremacists did that too?
Colonialism. You do realize that white colonialism literally spanned the entire globe. India was once under the rule of Great Britain.
Yeah, I understand that, but you're
So,
so you're
then you speak about Eastern societies, but a lot of Eastern societies, they don't subscribe to nuclear family ideals. They're not very nuclear in nature. A lot of them are also still communal because of
So
the
they don't
religion
have
that they have. The
so they don't
religions over
have
there are
husbands
not
and
necessarily
wives.
specific to nuclear family.
So husbands and wives are Western creation.
white Western creation. That's her point.
The
Yeah.
nuclear family is a white
But that's the
Western belief.
basis of the but
Husbands
that's
and
the basis
wives,
of it. But that's the basis of it.
husbands and wives predate written history, right? At least the idea of husband and wife, even if it didn't have the name husband or wife,
I'm
but
talking about the
male female
concept, just the
partnership
concept.
predates history. But the concept of marriage in general, right? Whether it came, whether it's a Western, the way that Western, excuse me, idealism see family, excuse me, see marriage, or the way that any other parts of the world, it was always about an exchange. Usually, marriage was about money, social status. Like that's
Okay.
what marriage was about, generally speaking. That's why
Marriage was
a lot of those societies, marriage is
Oh,
they
le-
what's the word I'm looking for? Where they kind of arranged. That's why arranged marriages still exist because in a lot of those societies, marriage is still about capital and social status.
yeah,
So now
generational
we live
wealth.
in a world
So
where marriage is about love, quote unquote, right? It's supposed to be in the modern society, but we
okay.
live in a capitalist society, so marriage still has to be about capital and social status.
Okay,
But again,
so
if we're talking about family and we're talking about community, we don't have to necessarily operate in that space. We can operate in a space that is about building community and family outside of capital and social status.
all right. So what you're saying then is marriage has existed in essentially all the cultures across the whole world, but the white supremacist spin is the nuclear family. Even though
Yes.
Asians, Arabs, Indians, all of these people, they had family, they had, and then on top of their nuclear
But
family,
they
they
do
had their
not
grandmas
subscribe
in
to
the
the
community
nuclear family.
that
You do
that
realize
are,
that, right? None of these
all right, hold
communities
on,
subscribe to the nuclear family.
hold on, hold on. Hold on 1 second.
But we can
Their
look it up
community.
because you seem to be conflating the nuclear family with family in general. And the nuclear family
hmm,
specifically is a white Western construct.
All right, that sounds fine. I heard you when you said that. For me, like I'm prior service military, flown all over the world, the whole 9 yards. Arabs, they've been getting married they in their countries uninterrupted for years. Their cultures are here in America. They didn't change them to match American standards per se in terms of what the commitments are between those families. For Arabs, Asians, Indians, all of them, they've been doing the same things for for thousands of years at this point. So you and I just have different opinions on that. I accept that you believe that nuclear family and marriage is a white supremacist construct, and that's why we should avoid it as a people. I understand that. I just
That's not an
disagree with
opinion.
that, and
That
I
is a
don't think
fact.
it's historically. Hold on. Whether it's a fact or not, to me, it's not. I don't agree with it. And you saying it's a fact isn't going to change what I know anthropologically is true about the rest of the world. And so I get it. I heard you, and now I'm telling you I don't agree with it and and why I don't agree with it. Because I know historically that is categorically false. People have
That
been
is
getting
not
married
categorically
for I
false.
get it. I get it. I'm not arguing with you about it. I'm only telling you my side. So you don't have to hop in and tell me that you
So
disagree.
you want
I
to say that
already
that
know
is
you disagree.
categorically false. You're saying it's categorically false. So
I
now
don't
I
care.
want you
It's
to
my turn to
describe
speak.
nuclear
It's
families
my turn to speak.
in places that were never touched
Melanie,
by white colonialism.
Melanie,
Describe their
is it
family
my turn
structures
to
and how it is the nuclear family.
Melanie, is it my turn to speak even if you disagree with me?
But you're disagreeing, but you're not backing it up.
Okay, that's what I'm doing wrong. I'm sorry. I'll try to back it up. Let me speak uninterrupted and I'll try to back it up, okay? All right. So I don't believe marriage is a white supremacist ideology. This is nouveau history that our women specifically kick and preach. And this is what you believe. And I accept that. I'm not trying to change your opinion. I'm only saying that you go ahead and you build your community the way you want to. But statistically, what we're seeing with the children who are born in houses that are outside the bonds of marriage, because marriage, what we figured out so far, is marriage is the best institution for the rearing of children to date. You're saying that there are better ways, but they are untested by time, right? And what it is that we're seeing so far as homes that are not brought exist this way, is that for the most part, all the dregs of society they are filled up with people who practice these idealisms. And so, as far as our people, I believe a separate message should be given. You can preach your message. People like me to preach mine, and mine is about family and marriage and commitment and planning a family first and then having your children. and then you can preach that people should just have sex and children with their friends, and as long as there's people around to raise the kids, then they're going to be fine.
There's research that supports that though.
Okay, let me ask you
Okay,
this then.
sounds
Let me
good.
ask you. Let me ask you this. Where is, um, in modern times, in contemporary times, is this non-nuclear family being successfully ran in America?
And a lot of same-sex marriages.
But they're basing their family off of the nuclear family. But
And a
they're
lot of
just changing. But
co-parenting
they're just
and a
changing the
lot of
genders in it.
co-parenting
Because if
and a
they,
lot of the co-parenting
if
again,
they,
again, psychologically speaking, research shows that if there are two present parents, whether they are in the household or not, you generally will have similar results from children in two-parent households where parents are married and children who are in a household where their parents co-parent and they go back and forth between two households. Again, the research, the psychological research, the sociological research shows that generally speaking, it's not about being in one household, but having two present parents, having two present loving parents.
okay, cool. I'll run with that. But what I'm asking is, okay, you said
And on
that
top of that,
same-sex
and
marriages.
let me
Hold on.
just real quick touch on that because the statistics, when they do the statistics, and they specifically lean into just two married homes, especially like the statistic of absent Black fathers, it's totally like incorrect because they base the statistics on fathers that were married to their spouse instead of basing the statistics on just present fathers, whether they are with the spouse in partnership and not in marriage or they are just co-parents. So that number is a lot smaller than what people think. They think that there are so many absent Black fathers, but actually Black fathers are much more present. And it just goes forth the way that research is conducted on Black communities in Western society, just to continue to perpetuate that we are the dregs of society, when in actuality that is not the case.
No, we're not the dredges of society. We're going against what is, mainstream culture. As much as we would like to implement our own African culture or our own interpretation of it, because it can never be authentic. So it'll have to be an interpretation of African culture. We don't live in an environment that is conducive to African culture. So it would behoove us as a nation to, because we already have done it. It's this half foot in and half foot out shit that we do where we want to adopt some shit of white supremacy that benefits us, but we don't want to, touch the other stuff that doesn't benefit us. Because when we look at these things, the whole narrative of how black women are perceiving modern times comes through a white lens of feminism. So we can't sit here and say that the nuclear family is a white supremacist thought and then run to feminism and its ideals and its talking points and not try to make that a white supremacist thought as well. So we picking and
But
choosing
Black
which
women
white supremacist
don't
thoughts that works
subscribe to
for
white
us,
feminism. Black women subscribe to womanism. There is
but which
a
is an
distinct
offshoot of
separation
feminism.
between white
Yeah.
feminism and black feminism is known as womanism.
But that's,
All right,
but what
so
you're
we,
doing.
we get what you're saying. We get what you're saying, Melanie. But these are distinctions you guys are making inside of your own echo chamber. The men that are outside of this echo chamber that want family and want community and stuff like that, what they have decided to do is just to avoid these women. And so what we're seeing is a lot of the women saying, "Well, where are the men at? Where are the men at?" And then and the reason that you're not you, but these women are not finding the competent, productive, successful, competitive black men is because these men are looking for traditional wives. Men with traditional values and want traditional things like marriage want traditional wives. They don't want this stuff, and that's why our women are the least married group of women on the planet. Now, you said, "Hey, we've got the 2018 or 2019 CDT report about black father involvement." Okay, that is because it was a measurement of black fathers and not a measurement of childless children. So a measurement of childless children would speak to
Childless
the
children?
let me I'm sorry,
I mean, explain childless
the,
children.
that was a misspeak. Thank you for correcting me. Okay,
Sorry.
a measurement of childless children without fathers is different than a measurement of involved black husbands or black fathers, right? Because your involved black fathers don't are men who had a child or had a family and are involved, or had children with a woman and they are involved. But the men who have multiple babies by multiple women, they're bad fathers. That's one bad father, even though they're causing 10 or 9 or 12 or 15 broken homes. And so that's why the children of these multifaceted, no rules, no regulation communities that you're talking about are not represented in that CDC number to the extent that you think they are, because the majority of the fathers in the black communities are participating fathers. The minority of fathers, though, are having babies with multiple men. And these are the Pookie and Ray Ray fuckboys that all the traditional men are talking about and holding accountable, but our women are still reproducing with, right? So I get what you're saying about community. I don't agree with it. I think it is destructive and chaotic, and it is a woman's thinking and approach to family so she doesn't have to meet the standards of a husband, right? And she can move and shift through the responsibilities and duties of motherhood. That's what I think it is, but I understand you feel differently about it. And I know that what you're talking about doesn't exist in any large scale and hasn't existed over any period of time for it to be tested. And every variation of it that has existed over a long period of time has led to the fall of a society. And in our culture, it is causing worse outcomes for our kids in our community. But I know that college has taught all of our women now that they can just talk about the shit, and as long as they can intellectualize it, even if it doesn't make sense and it's not working in reality, if you can beat somebody in an argument on it, that means that it's right. And so I'll make this last point in closing, okay? You got, and I use this analogy, and I'm going to close on this analogy, and then I'll be a really good listener for you, Melanie. All right, so lions, right? You got one top male lion, and then you got the female lions that basically run the pack. And then you've got like some orbital male lions that will continually compete against the top lion. Now, the top lion, he gets to have sex with all the girls. And that's what drives the smaller two lions to continue to try to compete against him, right? So that they can take the top spot as leader of the pride. Now, when they win, they kill that lion's children. They kill his kids. Now, the reason they kill the kids is because they're the kids of a weaker lion, and they don't want to devote the resources to those children to grow them up to 400-pound big cats. It's easier to just kill them and have their own kids. Now, let's say we instituted our morals as humans on a pride of lions. Well, now the women get to sleep with whoever they want, and the kids don't have to be killed. So now you have smaller and smaller lions who are being born in smaller and smaller groups. They can't fight off the hyena. They can't bring down the water buffalo, right? They're not trapping the gazelle anymore. Lions get smaller and smaller and they end up dying. So if we apply our moral principles to lions, then it does not work for lions. They get smaller and die out and disappear. Nature is not fair and it is not moral. So you applying moral arguments and stuff like that, they're good to pontificate on. Maybe there's things we can draw from and add, but ultimately there is a way that this shit works between men and women. And the reason that the most dominant cultures and communities in the world run this family structure is because it is what works best to breed people who will grow up and compete for resources and participate in their societies to keep those societies running. Okay, so what you're talking about may sound good to you, not to me, but to you. But if you applied it to the pride of lions, that is black people, it will continue to destroy them. And that's what we're seeing. That's my opinion.
First of all, I really am very tired of people using like animals in the wild as an analogy for like human beings, because we literally do not function like that at all. So to even bring any animal type analogy in terms of behavior is like redundant and ridiculous, because we don't function that way at all. Obviously, there
It
is
was
no
an
moral
analogy
difference.
about a
And
moral principle. It was about a
even so,
principle,
even
not
so, to
about
use the
lions, not about
again,
who's in
even so,
charge.
to use the analogy of any animals
So
and
you
the way that
missed
they
it.
function, and then compare it to the way that
Yep.
human beings functions, it just
Right.
doesn't
So
make
you
any
missed it.
sense
I got
because
it. You missed the
we don't
point.
function that way. We don't function that way. That's first off. Second off, you in your argument, you basically argued for the perpetuation of like dominating colonialism.
No, that's not what he
That's basically
did.
what you
He
argued
was
for.
what he was comparing was
He
culture.
basically said
What he
that the reason why the societies work the way that they have worked is because this works for breeding the people who are gonna have the power in society to like be powerful agents in society, and a lot of that is through force, through war.
no no what the analogy he was making was that when you introduce a concept to any system that is successful, you run the risk of throwing off that system and killing the whole population or the whole society in general. That was the point he was trying to make.
But
And
that point doesn't, I think for me, that point doesn't make any sense, at least to me, because that is not how we function. Society just changes. Society doesn't change, and because
but
society changes, we decided to
but
kill
no,
a group of people, or
what
that a
doesn't
group of people are
change.
just going to die off because the society changed. The society just changes, and then the people change with society because naturally we will just do whatever we need to do to survive because that is instinctual. That is human nature to just do what we need to do to survive in the way that the society is
Right.
changing.
So you
That's
said you didn't understand, Melanie. You said you didn't understand. Is it that you didn't understand or you don't agree? Because
I'm
those are
saying
two
that
different
it
things.
doesn't make any sense to me
I get it, but
because
did
we
you
don't function
understand?
that way. And
Did
even
you
to have it
understand?
in the way that he's explaining your analogy to say that it's going to be killing off a sector of human beings still doesn't make
okay.
sense
So
All right,
so
because
let
did
me
you
human
so
beings
let me
don't
ask
understand?
function
this.
that way.
So
Human
so let
beings
This
me
is the
adapt to
disingenuous
society.
circular shit we're
so
talking
so let
about.
me let me ask you this then. As a community, were we better off as a community? Togetherness. I'm not talking about anything else. Was our communities more intact under the two-parent household that we ran 60, 70, 80 years ago? Or is our community better now that we run a more do what you want society?
I think in general, that historically speaking, when black people decided to build in community, white people destroyed those communities,
That's not what I'm
right?
asking you. Ignore the white people.
But
Ignore white people coming in and
again,
disrupting whatever we
again,
had going on.
so
I'm just asking from the
so
standpoint of community, families, and not having these families anymore. Which
from the
community would you
standpoint,
rather live
again,
in?
Oh,
so
Melanie, one
repeat your
second.
question because
Melanie,
I'm
one
a little
second. One second.
confused.
I'm sorry, Melanie, one second. I'm sorry to cut you off. Hey, Miss Demetia and Queen. Listen, I don't want I don't want it to seem like Black Jesus and Vic is just ganging up on Melanie. So as a woman, if y'all want to unmute and back up something Melanie says or ask Melanie a question, please feel free to do that as well. Go ahead, Melanie.
He just needs to rephrase his question because it just wasn't very clear to me.
Okay, what I'm asking is the totality of black people and how we operate in communities, as far as how we associate with neighbors and associate with each other. Were we better off 60 or 80 years ago when the nuclear family was the was the norm back then, or are we operating better now, being that the new normal is the single parent household?
I don't really think I can answer your question because I don't think a single parent household is still normal.
Seventy percent of our
That's still
community is
unconventional.
single
And
parent household led. However you want to chalk it up, whether you want to say it's men, women, whoever are the head of these single households, we have now an epidemic of single parent households. I can go knock on 10 doors in my old neighborhood, and I guarantee you 9 out of 10 of those doors are going to be answered by women, and they're going to be the only occupants along with their children of that residence. If I go back, not even I'll just say 40 years ago, and I knock on 10 houses that I grew up on the same street that I grew up on back then, I'm going to knock on the door of at least out of 10 people, 6 or 7 are going to be two parent households. So what I'm asking is, with the changing dynamic of family in our communities, we can't deny that the dynamic of family has changed in the black community over the last 40, 50, 60 years. What I'm asking is, as a community, has this worked out for us?
I think in general,
That's all I'm
whether we
asking
have
in general.
seen what because you're speaking about something that happened like 40 years ago, and you're talking about the state of black people and community
She won't
40,
answer the
50 years
question.
ago, right? And we've evolved as a people in general. So we were in a much more oppressed place
I'm not
back
talking about
then,
our
right?
oppression. I'm not talking about our
Yeah.
oppression.
But even
I'm
She
just
so,
won't
talking
answer the
about
because
our
question.
when we talk
community.
about we talk about the community, you're talking about the community in terms of the community status within our society, yes or no?
No, I'm just talking about our community as it was in the society that we created for ourselves.
In what
The,
context?
God damn it, woman. Don't worry about it. We just gonna
See,
ignore the
and this is
question.
just the
Because
Don't worry
what I'm
frustration
about
saying
it.
is
that you
like
to go in
Don't worry
circles.
about it.
She
Don't
smart
worry
you want to
enough
about
to
say
it.
that
know
we're
what
better
she's saying
off,
and
but
what's
there's
being said to her.
what
Right?
we're
She
saying,
won't
but what
admit
I'm
she's
saying is
wrong.
that
This is the need to be right. And this is why
this is
you
not the
can't
need to be
argue
right. It's
with
because
these
I
women
need to know the
because they don't
context
want
that
to
we're
work with
speaking of.
anybody. They just
Because
want to
you want to say
argue,
that we
be
were
right,
better
and be
off,
in
but 40, 50
charge.
years ago,
So
we
you
were a
just
lot more
let them do it.
oppressed.
Okay, let me ask you
There's
this
still
then.
no
Let me ask you
generational
this
wealth
then.
in the black
Okay.
Let me
community.
ask you this then. We're not talking about wealth. We're not
But
talking
this is what I'm
about
saying.
wealth.
All of the
We're
things
not talking about
that
that.
will help
Okay, so let
progress
me
us
ask you
in
this.
society,
Under
we
those
still don't have those things as
under
an effect of
those
when there were nuclear families.
okay, so under those oppressive conditions, we were still able to raise families up, to have a nuclear family, to have the necessary camaraderie amongst each other during those oppressive times. Now that we're free, why can't we do these things anymore?
Because you're basing everything on nuclear family instead of on community. So now you're telling me, were we better
Well,
off
goddamn.
perpetuating the
Well,
nuclear family?
goddamn.
Like
Can I
that don't
say
make no
something?
sense.
Yes,
Because we
Queen,
were.
speak, and
Ladies,
then I want to
Let
speak.
me
ladies,
Go
mute
what
ahead.
I
up
was
Okay.
because
talking
this is
Yeah.
about earlier
disingenuous, man.
before
This is
Nicole came on
disingenuous.
is this is the brick wall black men are running into when they're trying to have reasonable conversations. And if you girls aren't stepping up to say anything to young ladies who are
Women has got
beautiful
to
and
say
talented and smart like Melanie, then we're not going to get anywhere with them because they don't respect the men enough to even answer straight questions. It's this circular, nonsensical, pontificating bullshit and no straight answer. You have to be able to call these women out. You got to go on their pages and tell them, no,
You're
that's not
not
right.
giving
It's
me
not
any
working.
context to
But if
answer
you
the
don't do
question.
that,
The black
if you don't
community is
do that,
better in
then
what
they're just going
context?
to
In
keep
what
going in
facet?
circles.
I gave
how
you
They're
In
just
the
going to
am
mental
I
keep
context.
going
health
in
of the
supposed to
black
circles.
jump
community?
in when
In
everybody's
the
talking
Okay,
over?
hold on,
in the
hold on, hold on,
Right.
hold
culture,
on,
Let
the
Queen
hold
realm
on,
of the
speak.
black community?
hold on.
In what
Let-
context?
Okay, Queen, go ahead, Queen, and then we're gonna have Mr. Misha, and then
No,
Black Jesus
like
and Victor
I
back.
didn't want to interrupt the back and forth going on. That's why I didn't jump in. I wasn't trying to like there was a good rebuttal between them going on, and I wasn't trying to be rude or anything. I know for what I gathered and understand. Um, Simply put, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. I would love to have a community base like we did back in the day in Africa, but we don't even know exactly what that is or where we came from to those specifically. I know you probably got more information on that, but just hold on a second. All I know is it. I feel yes, it was better back then, and I say that for the fact that there was more structure within our homes back then. Where like even though there was issues within like our grandparents having stuff going on, but community was a whole lot stronger back then. People were together even in the times where after we came out of slavery and we built our own communities, we built our own little towns, we came together and built and did great things. We don't do that anymore right now because it's like we're so divided, and that's where I feel like Jesus is trying to come in and explain more so of that. Like I'm not arguing with anybody. I see that you're make both of y'all are making very good and solid points. However, I'm just saying I'm trying to take what makes sense to me so I can explain it back to other people too. I know that it is important to have a sense of family, which is the smaller part which connects the sense of community. And
Hey,
that's
I want to say
It's
this.
culture.
Love, like, and if you won't just tell her that she's wrong and being obtuse, and you keep trying to pat her on the back for this thinking, then it's not going to change.
Okay. So
Because you're saying like, hey, these communities back in Africa, and you're trying to grant credence to it when she's talking about a handful of communities, 300 years ago or 200 years ago in Africa. Babe, we're in America, and
And I
we've
know, and
been
I
won
sat there and
before,
also
and we've
said,
won
when in
before.
Rome, do
So
as the
you just
Romans
gotta
did. We're in
shut her
America.
down. You
No,
got to
I'm
shut her
sorry.
down. Hold on. The same way,
Sir,
the
she
same
doesn't
way
have to
that
do none
our
of that.
women,
She
hold
has
on,
her
the
own
same way
mind
that
and she
our
can speak her
women,
own mind.
I
What are you
got it. I
talking
got it.
about?
Thank you for sticking up for it. Yeah. The same way that the women have no
She
problem
literally
coming
said
onto
that we
men's
both have
channels
points that she's
and
agreeing
telling
with and
the
not
same
agreeing
way,
with.
hold on. The same way that women have no problem going onto men's channels and telling us when they think we're wrong or we're full of shit or we're pookies or ravies or this, that, and the other. We don't see that ever back towards the women when they're talking some bullshit. We hear this, I see where you're coming from, sis, and blah, 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 even though you obviously disagree with her. So
okay.
it's
I
just,
can't
we're
have you
not going to
speak
move
for
the
me in that
needle, babe.
respect because I did say I agree and disagree with both of y'all in different contexts, and I was trying to explain that. And it's like I'm trying to do it in the best way because I don't like coming off disrespectful because I don't like being disrespected.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Mm.
where I'm checking myself at because I know my mouth can be very crude at sometimes. And I'm around a bunch of people that I'm not really familiar with. I have a good rapport with you guys. I don't know y'all. And I don't want nobody popping off at me and then it going back and forth. If y'all two are comfortable doing that with each other, that's y'all. That's why I stay in the back and just listen for a minute. Because
Right.
I wasn't want to jump
I
in the
see.
middle of something and not hear a good lift of it so I can actually make my own opinion about it.
Mm-hmm. Own
You
opinion.
feel like I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
formulate my opinions. That's why I sat back and listened. It wasn't me just sitting there and not jumping in, not keeping people accountable. She's entitled to feel how she feels, just like you're entitled to feel how you feel. And I came in the middle of it saying, I agree with both of you, and I also disagree. I agree with her in the fact that community is so important. Absolutely. I don't agree with the fact that it's like we're in America. So what the dynamic of what she's talking about won't necessarily work for here because we are focused on individualized stuff where it comes to our families because that's how we were set up here. Okay?
When I hear
So
people don't, this is just my opinion. Even the non-nuclear family or the extended group, they stem from a nuclear family. They have to have a mother and father that connects them to the extended family. They have to have grandparents that makes them that extended family. They have to have a point that makes them that extended family. By that I mean, just taking for example, just my family. Um, we have a grandfather and a grandmother who are the patriarch and matriarch of our family, right? Everything under that is considered extended family. Everything up under that is the extended family. The uncles, the aunts, the cousins, and all of us are just sharing community or child rearing responsibilities, right? So that's what she's speaking of. But even in that, it stems from the nuclear family. Without grandma
No,
and
it
grandpa,
doesn't.
you
What
don't
you're
have.
describing is what you're
So where does
describing
the okay?
is
So where does it
not the
begin?
nuclear family.
Where does it
If you're
begin?
describing what you're describing is a community now. You are no longer describing the nuclear family. The nuclear family is just mother, father, children. That is the nuclear family. Once you extend past that, you include aunts, uncles, grandfathers, this, that, the third, the neighbor, this person, that person. That is now community. And again, one of the reasons why the nuclear family is problematic is because it perpetuates individualism. So when we
But
talk
that's
about black
that's so
people who leave the
disingenuous
hood
though.
and they do well
Yeah,
and they
it's
get
a
rich
bunch
and
of
they do something for
bullshit.
themselves and they don't come back to
Yeah,
the community
because at the end of the
because they
day,
think that
guess who
people in the
rules the
community should
community?
like strap up their boots and also do as well as they did. That type of thinking is perpetuated by individualism and the nuclear family, which are white supremacist constructs. What
They
you're
are not white.
describing is something
Those
that
are
we see
natural
perpetuated in
concepts.
black communities, which is
Hmm.
collectivism, where it's
No,
like
what
each of
Con.
us are responsible for each of
okay,
us. Each one teach one. It doesn't
what
matter
y'all are
whether
doing is
you
talking
have a
about
large
the
nuclear or
results
grand
of a
family. That's
nuclear family. The
Yeah.
results of a nuclear family is the extended family. That is the result of the nuclear
and
family. That is the how can you have an extended family without the first mother and father? Where does it come from?
Okay, hey,
the
Vic and Melanie, one
When
second.
you
Vic
say
and Melanie,
nuclear family, let's define nuclear family, because
okay.
it seems as if what
After
you're
Melanie talks,
conflating the
let me.
nuclear family with just family in general. Family and
After
nuclear family are two different things.
Yeah, after Melanie talks, I want to let Miss Demetia speak. So after Melanie talks about the nuclear family, I want Miss
And then
Demetia.
I'm gonna get out of here, because it's really frustrating for people to just not like listen to themselves and think that I'm not having any valid answers to things when they're not speaking in correct context, and they're asking me questions without context, and they're telling me that I am just wrong and absurd and trying to insult my intelligence, as if what I'm saying is not valid. Nuclear family is just mother, father, children, and then that line. That's it. And then
And
you
that's
have
the
When
your
the
part I was
family,
children
just
you
about
have
to
come home, you
say.
children,
make money, you come home, you go to work,
what
come home, you
happens
make
when
money
the
for your
children have
family.
children? But what happens when the
Again,
children
you
has
make money for
children?
you make money for
Your
your
own
family.
nuclear
Let
family.
me finish. When nuclear family is not family, right? Family includes aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, everybody, right? When and
Hey,
then the
please
people
mute
that
up,
you
y'all,
live
so I can
in
hear it better.
community
Please mute
with,
up.
and the people that you live in community with. The Black community has thrived when they have created communities where in the community they work together to build the community. The nuclear family perpetuates this idea that I'm going to do well for me and the legacy of my children, and that is it. I'm going to make all this money and I'm going to do it for me and my children, not me and my community. When people talk about doing better for me and my community, my extended family, and people who are, like, for instance, and this still happens in our communities, but a lot of the reasons why we don't go forth in society as a collective is because we don't think as a collective, like as a whole. Most of us perpetuate and live in individualism because of the structure of the nuclear family. I want to do well for me and my children. That is the idea of the nuclear family. That is individualism. Collectivism and community. I want to do well
Hey,
for me and
Vic,
my
please mute up, bro.
community. All right, I'm going to do well and I'm going to go back to the community and I'm going to teach the community. I'm going to do it for the community. That is collectivism. And that collectivism does not need the nuclear family to be sustainable. It just needs people. And the people can procreate without being in a nuclear family structure or in something that is a traditional family, because all you need to procreate is a man and a woman, or let's a biological female and a biological male. If I continue, if me and all the women and the men and the trans people and the non-binary people decide to be in the community and still procreate, we can still create a community, because there are going to be biological females and biological males who can have children together and raise these children in love in community with two parents, whether the parents are in the home or not. And again, the self-esteem, the mental issues, the psychological issues that are what the cause of criminality in our community come from broken homes, but the broken homes is because the one of the abandonment issues and the psychological issues that you have because of abandonment. Also, abandonment issues can exist because a parent is present but not emotionally present with their children, which happens in single parent homes. Why? When you yourself have to fend for you and your children, you can't think about nothing else because your child has to survive. You don't really have the mental capacity to think of anything else. You stay in survival mindset. Now, if we lived in community, if all single mothers lived in community and in that community everybody helped raise that child, now the child has a better opportunity to be loved by at least one parent and in their community. And because they have community, they no longer will develop psychologically, they will develop more psychologically sound because they were raised in community. All of these people who are raised in, and you're saying they're criminals and they're like the lowest ends of society, and they have all these psychological issues and all this trauma and so on and so forth. They're in jail, they're this, they're that. It's because they did not have love and they didn't have community, even if they had one parent. And again, likely because that parent was in survival mode because of the systemic oppression in this country. And that's what happens with single Black mothers in this country, because most of us live in the hood because of redlining, so on and so on and so forth. Now, had we thought more of, instead of blaming single mothers for like the dregs of society, Why don't we find ways to raise these children in community? Because when we
Or
raise the
the single
children, they
mothers
will
could marry
live in this
before
great
they carry.
society, and then they will be raised in this idea of collectivism and wanting to do better for their community instead of just doing better for them and their children. That
All
is the
right,
point that
let
I
the
was
white
making.
people do that first.
Love does fix the child.
So
It is
do
literally love.
Western
It is
people have
literally love.
communities?
It's
Do
literally
Western
love.
society have communities? Do Western society have communities?
Miss Demetria, you ready to speak?
Oh gosh, yes.
Generally
Tag me
speaking,
in. Goodness
Okay,
gracious.
hold
when
on,
you look
y'all.
at Western
Hey,
society,
Vic, please mute
when
up.
you look at Western society, generally speaking, we don't know our neighbors and we don't really have community. I live in my building. I don't know my neighbors. I know like four of them.
That's what I. Okay, you're right.
All right, Miss Demetria, let's let Miss Demetria speak. Miss Demetria, go ahead.
All right. Now I'm glad Melanie said what she said. So I can get a better understanding of where she's coming from. Now, this is my core beliefs. My core belief is that the order that God created is man and woman. And when you were talking about partnership and marriage, and you were breaking down like I don't know, it seemed kind of like you were saying, Melanie, like marriage is not a must. Well,
Yeah,
according
I was
to the
saying,
order
let me
of
just clarify.
God,
I was saying marriage is not a must, but partnership is a must.
yes, okay, to that point, when it comes to the order and alignment of God, not none of these terms that we use in order and alignment. When you penetrate a woman, that is your wife. That's marriage. That's covenant. That's the design. That's the original design. We have fallen away from that. From basically black to me to Queen to Vic to you, we all have these some similar ideologies. It's different and it's causing brokenness. Marriage is to be valued. It's not something that was our design to begin with. It was God's order and operation. And we are to find ourselves valuing that again. So I hear basically black speaking on that, passionately about that. I hear Vic speaking on that. So I don't agree with just falling into partnership. Yes, you're right. Over time, because of the brokenness of humanity, we have traditions. Don't confuse marriage with a tradition. It's order and it's alignment. We have traditions on what we say marriage is and who you can be married to and what type of partner you can have today, but it's stemming from brokenness. It's out of order. Um, that's my point on that. What was it that you was just saying?
I was saying that
I,
I think I personally, my view is that community is more important than marriage.
yes, 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 yes. Mm.
Mhm.
Ooh.
So let me ask you a
Again,
question,
that's
Demetria.
to me that's also that does happen, Melanie, and it is happening. So I'm not going to negate that. You know what I'm saying? Because all of us are products of that. Because everything is not just squeaky clean and perfect. We are actually living exactly what you're saying. But again, it's stemming from a broken system that God created. That's my belief. I
Yeah.
believe that it should be marriage. It should, you and I should have a spouse, a protector, and all this and that. That is the order of operations, but it's brokenness. So I feel like that's where that's coming from. Yes, there are other situations that do happen in life, like when you have widows. There's not a man there, but the community still thrives and still goes on and this and that. But we still don't want to take away from the value of a man. And I think when you first start talking, it came off like the men are not needed, like we don't need the men. And that's coming from brokenness. We do need the men.
Let me
We
just
still need them.
clarify that real quick, because that
Okay.
is not what I'm saying. I'm not
Okay.
saying we don't need men, right? Never
Okay.
said that. I said we
Okay.
don't need marriage as a construct. We do need
So kids
partnership,
need fathers.
right? And that partnership can exist romantically, or that partnership can just exist platonically. So if I decide in partnership that I'm going to have children with a platonic friend and raise that child in love, there should be nothing wrong with that, in the same way that someone would traditionally decide to be in partnership and marriage with someone and have children with them and raise that child in love.
Yeah, and then that means that you continuing to adopt and pass on the brokenness down from generation to generation, versus get on board with the covenant of marriage, which was the plan to begin with. And then this is what you will find. Then the community is going to have lack, because there's going to be consequences for not following God's divine order for our lives.
I'll say
Yeah.
in your belief, in your religious belief, yes. But I think we need to be careful about like putting our religious beliefs on society, because that is just your belief and your
No,
belief
no, no,
within,
no. I'm not
like that.
God. I'm Demetia.
And again, your
Yeah.
belief is that there will be consequences from God. That is not my belief. My belief is, if there is love, there is God. That is
All
God.
right.
You can't tell me that I'm not raising a child in love and that's not God, and that God is
All
not
right.
going to bless the child because I decided to do it unconventionally.
All right. So here's the question I have for you, Demetia. She's basically, what she's describing is what we have. We have women having children in partnership or less
Mm-hmm.
with men outside of wedlock, without the committed beginning of a family and people planning to have their children together in a committed thing of family. That's what we're having in majority. And the consequences that she's talking about, the divine retribution, is what we're seeing as the children are drifting further and further from being able to participate in society and act as functional people. And mental health is on the rise, especially in our community, and all these other incredibly negative things that are happening inside of our community because of lack of being brought up in a stable situation. Because the women in our community, and this is what I was pointing out to you girls before Miss Melanie came on, this is their belief and this is what they're pushing. They don't need to
Mm-hmm.
be married. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
that the men don't want to marry women. It's not that you got a whole bunch of Pookie and Ray Rays. Women that have this mindset can only be with guys who have this mindset as well. And us men call these mindset men Pookie and Ray Rays, because they reproduce from woman to woman without
Mm-hmm.
commitment, without anything. And the women are willing to do it because they don't believe they need a nuclear family. They feel like they got their grandma, their aunties, their cousins, and the baby can be raised by all of them together, and they don't need a husband. And this is why
Okay.
Let
we
me
Well,
have
ask
well
no
you a
said.
family.
Let
question
me
then,
ask
really
So
quick.
Melanie.
Basically,
she
well,
is
I just
what
have
we
a
were
question.
talking about.
So if the men that you speak of are not absent, then how can you say that that is not a commitment to
Okay.
the
Well,
child?
because all right. So that's a good question.
Because
Okay.
because
Uh, Go
so
ahead.
if and again, because for me, I feel like what you would be stating would be valid if the father is absent. But
All
if,
right.
if a modern man decides to have children with a woman, or it happened, or whatever the case may be, but still takes the responsibility to raise this child, even if him and the mother are not together, and they successfully figure out a way to co-parent with this child, which is what's happening, then how is that negative?
All right. All right, because it does happen, but it isn't happening on the average or in the majority. What's happening in the majority is that the women are raising these children on their own. They're receiving child support. Nearly 72% of women who are having children on their own are receiving child support without assistance from the men in these instances. So this is not what's happening in the majority. You're taking the best case scenarios of these instances and then applying it to the group. And that is not an appropriate way to look at what's happening in our community.
That's not what I'm saying is happening. What I'm saying is, if that were to happen, which is becoming more normalized, co-parenting is becoming more normalized. Having better relations with your I guess baby mama, baby dad situation, like all of that is becoming more normalized in society as we are attempting to rectify broken homes. So that's one of the solutions, is to figure out how to healthily co-parent. So if we as a community, if this is happening, and it's going to happen because people love to have
Men
sex
don't want men,
responsibly,
hold on,
and
men,
that's
but
never going to change because that's happened like throughout history, right? So if people are continuing to have sex irresponsibly because it happens, but then take on the duties and the responsibilities and of the consequences, which are their children, and that is becoming more normalized. If co-parenting is becoming more normalized, how is that a bad thing?
all right, because irresponsible people don't often have children and become responsible. That's why irresponsible men who father children without a plan to do so by accident with women that they wouldn't want as wives right? That's why these men do not stick around, and they do it over and over with women. And so it is, co-parenting is becoming more and more the norm, but that is because the dominant concepts as it pertains to women and their duties in marriage is that if it doesn't make me happy, I don't have to do it. There's no such thing as duty and honor and responsibility and commitment for women. If they're happy or unhappy, is their God. And so they leave when they're unhappy, and they're leaving their husbands. That's why you have 80% of the marriages that are filed, the divorces that happen are being filed by women. So what you're talking about is something that sounds good in theory, but you got a family court system that extracts resources from the men and or jails them when they enter into these love communities that you're talking about, with all these babies being popped up all willy-nilly. So the men are not willing participants. What's happening is the women want to have children without having to meet the standards of men, and they need the men so that they
I
can have the.
think there's
One
a
second,
dual
let me
issue here that
finish the
you're
idea.
ignoring real
Let me
quick.
I
Because
let me finish the idea. Let me
go
finish the
ahead,
idea.
finish because
Let me
go
finish
ahead.
the idea. All right. So the women do not want to meet the standards of a husband because they do not want to submit. They're calling the structure of marriage and nuclear family white supremacist, even though it's existed in all cultures going back through time. And yes, they had nuclear families and communities that came from those nuclear families. They aren't mutually exclusive. So that argument, I don't know why you made it. But anyways, the 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 women
It's
don't
no
want to
longer
meet
a
the
nuclear
standards of.
family if it's
One
beyond the
second,
nuclear
one
family.
second, go ahead. One second. So the women don't want to meet the standards of husbands. So they're having their children with men who are community dick, like you're talking about. And then the children are growing up without fathers, and the women blame the fathers and use the family court system to extract resources from those dads. And they're living in these communities that work like communes. I grew up in Detroit. I went to school in downtown Detroit. I had tons of friends that were in housing projects, and I saw lots and lots and lots of women, right, with tons and tons of kids, and only a few men running around who were baby daddies for two, three, four, five, 10 women in the same housing complexes. And that's what I grew up around. That's what I grew up around. So this community idea that you're talking about, it's like this utopian thing, but the concept as it actually exists in nature is us putting our morals on lions, is killing the pride. And the data is stating that, and what you're doing, instead of accepting that the data is being caused by a lack of family structure, is you put it on, not you, but women who argue your point, put it on white supremacy, colorism, racism, and all these institutional concepts that have nothing to do with why Pookie is having another baby with Pookiesha outside of wedlock that he's not going to stick around for. So
But it
that
has
that's how I
everything
see
to
it.
do with, and here's the thing is, right, like I hear what you're saying. I think my biggest issue with what you're saying is that you have yet to put any culpability on the man who's having children with 10 women.
I was
I
just
just
getting
called
ready
him a
to say,
pookie.
Why?
I constantly
So instead of us
denigrate
sitting
these
here and
men.
just
I
always
don't
putting
stick
the
up for them.
responsibility of the
I just
woman
do
that is
not
bringing,
allow the
you spoke
women
and now
to
let me
call
speak.
themselves
Okay, you
victims in
spoke
these
and now let me
circumstances.
speak.
They are
Because you
co-conspirators. And
spoke,
whenever
and I almost interrupted you and I stopped so you could finish. You finished. Let me speak. So again, you are talking about the Pookies and
a
whoever the
man is
names that
dog
you
shit
talking
too,
about that
I
have
was
like
very clear about that. Okay.
they
And
got
I'm not
10 baby
removing any
mamas,
responsibility for
but
the
we're
men, but
still
I do
talking
not
about the
grant
women
women
who are
who do
draining
this victim
resources from the
status.
men instead of talking about raising the men to be better to women. And the reason that men do this to women is literally rooted in misogyny. That is
because we can't talk
misogyny.
to one side. We still have
So
daughters.
again, if men love and respect women, when they end up having children with the women, that they will come up and step up to the plate and be responsible for their actions. So because men, and here it is,
accountability.
yes, you can take culpability for women. I guess we should choose better, even though like men be fooling us all the time, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
who
Yes.
actually
No, they
sits down
don't.
Yes,
and
they
have children?
do.
Yes, they do.
These
Nobody
I
are
don't
does
even
that.
want
no,
to
they
Very
hear
few
that.
don't.
walk
No,
that
they
Hold
walk,
on,
Miss
don't.
hold on.
Kyle.
I'm speaking on this one now. I'm
Not
going to speak on this one now.
children
First
with
and foremost, I had
and
a
are
my husband was my best friend since high school. Found out, like I said before, I don't know. I'm not going to go into this deeper part of the story because it's really traumatizing. I ain't going to traumatize nobody tonight. I've known this man since high school. He's my best friend. You understand what I'm saying? All these 20 plus almost years, found out he was a monster. So no, Don't sit there and say that women should have picked better or everything else in
Yes.
between that.
No,
Because
I'm always say
Yes.
y'all
that.
will sit there and will be actors, will be the
No,
greatest
we won't. No,
contenders.
we won't. No, we won't.
I lived
No,
it.
we
You
won't.
can't tell me
Well,
that. I
it's
lived
No, we
it.
won't. No, we
I
won't.
me,
lived it.
Dina,
No, we won't.
Queen. We've
No,
all
we
I
won't.
lived
had
it. How you
No,
gonna
we
stories
deny
won't.
of
my
deception
experience?
with a married man.
No, we
So
won't. What it is this. What it comes down to is that
Hold on,
we
y'all.
see people. I'm gonna keep saying this. We see people for who they are. We think we can change them, and when they don't change the way we want them to change, then it's now we didn't see
Who
it
said
coming. No,
anything
we
about
seen
That's
it coming.
changing?
What we
not
didn't
that's
see
not a
coming
one
was
size
that we
fit
couldn't
all.
that
change
is
it.
That's what you
not
That's
missed.
that is
bullshit,
not
man.
Listen,
That's a
true.
lack of
No, Vic.
accountability. That's a lot
No,
of
Vic.
that allows you to say, well, I ain't know
No,
who they
that's not. If
was,
a man
and
is fooling
we
you to
always
No.
see
believe that
who
he is
people
one
because
thing
were,
and he
I
is
man.
sat here
not,
and
No.
said to you, he pretended to be somebody he wasn't and did it for years. How am I supposed to know the difference when
Well,
this is how he
well,
presented
go back to
himself
arranged
the whole way
marriages then. Since
through?
y'all are so bad at picking mates, go back to
No,
arranged marriages then. No? Well, why are y'all still out here picking men if y'all are
no.
horrible at
How
it?
about men are be better human beings? That's the
it has
thing is that
come
Vic,
a lot of
No,
the
choose
issues
the
that we
better
have with
human
why?
men is
beings.
because
There are
men
better
are
human beings.
allowed to
Choose
be
them.
assholes.
Choose
Why?
them. You
Vic,
always
why do
let me
you
tell
have
you
to
something. Y'all
insult?
have the
Just
because I'm not
speak
going to give y'all
how
the
you
capacity
feel.
of children. Y'all are not children. Y'all are adults. Y'all want to be respected as my equal. So as my equal, I'm gonna give you the same accountability that I hold myself to.
You know what?
I
I
have a
almost
previous
came
baby
down to your
mother.
level, but I'm too hot for
I
that.
have a previous
I'm
baby
I'm a
too
whole
mother.
hot for that.
husband. This
I
is
have
big.
a
I'm gonna
previous
just
baby
leave you with
mother.
this.
You
You
know
you
what I
get no
don't do?
respect. You
I
get
It's
don't
like
blame
you're
my
you tell
getting
baby
us to
mother
be
none.
for
You
better,
being my
get
and then when
baby
we
none.
stay
mother.
single
You
for a
She's
get
long
going to
time,
none.
be
you tell
her.
us
The
to
You get
be
you
single
wasn't
because
absolutely. I
married.
we
was
That's
riding
we
with your
want to be
mother
bullshit,
better.
and you
man.
tried to insult people. You get no
They
respect.
wasn't
I
Since you
don't give
have
a
to
fuck
result
about
in
y'all
insulting
respect.
married.
people,
Y'all
I'm
you
respect
not.
don't
don't
get no
mean
respect.
nothing.
All right, y'all. All
Oh
right, y'all. All right,
well.
y'all. Pause.
Man, that's bullshit,
Pause.
man. I'm
Pause.
sick of
Pause.
the
Pause. Pause. Pause,
bullshit,
y'all.
bro.
Pause.
It's disingenuous. I'm sorry, Noble, but
No,
this is
no, no, no.
Cry.
You
You
good, you
disingenuous,
good,
crying.
bro. You
man.
good,
Go
bro.
I
go
agree.
cry in the
Vic, Vic,
corner.
You want
Go
to
Vic,
cry in
finish.
the
Vic,
corner.
Vic. You
I'm
good,
finna
bro?
step
Vic.
You're a
down, man.
grown
Okay,
man.
bro. All
Go
right, bro.
cry in the
I'll bring you
corner.
another minute. I appreciate you, Vic.
Yeah, yeah,
Appreciate you.
yeah,
Time
yeah.
out, Vic.
Have a good, bro. Have a good one.